From as long as I can remember, Dark Lake has always been shrouded in mystery and fear. Nestled on the outskirts of our small town, the lake is surrounded by dense forests that seem to swallow any light that dares to penetrate them. The water itself is unnaturally still, reflecting the moonlight with an eerie clarity that gives the entire area an otherworldly feel. It's the kind of place where whispers of the past linger in the air, and shadows move just beyond the edge of your vision. The most chilling tale associated with Dark Lake is the legend of the man from the lake. According to local folklore, many years ago, a man was cursed by an ancient spell and condemned to dwell eternally in the depths of the lake. Some say he was a fisherman wronged by the townspeople. Others believe he was a victim of dark magic gone awry. Regardless of the origin, the story remains the same. Anyone who dares to swim in Dark Lake at night vanishes without a trace, swallowed by the very waters that once held him captive. Elders in the community have always warned against venturing near the lake after sundown. They recount numerous accounts of disappearances that have plagued the area for decades. Friends have gone missing, solo swimmers have never returned, and those who have dared to explore the shoreline at night speak of hearing strange noises, whispers, footsteps, and the distant sound of splashing that never seems to have a source. The atmosphere around Dark Lake is thick with an unsettling presence. On quiet nights, the wind rustles through the trees in a way that feels almost communicative, as if the forest itself is alive and watching. The moonlight casts long, twisted shadows on the water, making it hard to distinguish reality from imagination. Locals often speak of feeling eyes on them when they walk by the lake, and some even claim to have seen the faint outline of a man standing at the water's edge, staring into the darkness. Despite the warnings, the allure of proving the legend false is too tempting for some. The idea that there could be a rational explanation behind the mysterious disappearances is a challenge that a few brave or foolish souls have taken up over the years. These skeptics believe that there must be a logical reason for the vanishing acts, whether it be strong currents, hidden underwater caves, or even deliberate foul play. As the sun sets and darkness begins to envelop Dark Lake, the air grows colder, and the sounds of the night become more pronounced. Crickets chirp, insects buzz, and the occasional hoot of an owl breaks the silence. Yet, beneath these natural sounds, there is an undercurrent of something more sinister. It's as if the lake itself holds its breath, waiting for the night to fully descend so that the legend of the man from the lake can reclaim its hold over the town once more. This was the backdrop against which a group of friends decided to test their courage. They had heard the stories, laughed them off as mere superstition, and now felt confident enough to challenge the age-old legend. Little did they know, the night they chose to spend by Dark Lake would blur the lines between myth and reality in ways they could never have imagined. Jake, Emily, Lucas, and Mia had been inseparable since childhood, their bond forged through countless adventures and shared secrets. Growing up in the small town near Dark Lake, they had heard the stories countless times, each retelling more exaggerated than the last. While most of their peers accepted the legends with a mix of fear and respect, this group of friends saw an opportunity for excitement and a chance to prove that the tales were nothing more than old wives' tales. Jake was the unofficial leader of the group, always eager to push boundaries and challenge the status quo. His adventurous spirit often led them into situations that others might shy away from, but it was his unwavering confidence that inspired the rest to follow his lead. Emily, the most rational and level-headed among them, provided a counterbalance to Jake's impulsiveness. Her analytical mind and cautious nature ensured that their plans were well thought out, even if she secretly yearned for the thrill that Jake pursued. Lucas, the joker of the group, had a knack for easing tensions with his humor. His lighthearted approach to the legends of Dark Lake made the idea of challenging the curse seem less daunting. Mia, the quiet yet observant member, had always been fascinated by the supernatural. Her interest in the unknown made her the perfect person to spearhead the research into the lake's history, gathering as much information as possible to back their challenge. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned a deep shade of orange, the friends gathered at Jake's house to finalize their plan. They sat around the old wooden table in his garage, surrounded by maps of the lake, flashlights, and other gear they deemed necessary for their overnight stay. The air was thick with anticipation and a hint of nervousness, each of them aware of the risks, but driven by the desire to uncover the truth. "All right, so here's the plan," Jake began, spreading out the map of Dark Lake. "We'll set up camp on the northern shore, where it's a bit more secluded. We'll have our phones on silent, but just in case, I brought a couple of walkie-talkies. Emily, you handle the equipment setup, and Mia, you can take charge of documenting everything." Emily nodded, already moving to organize the flashlights and cameras. "I've got the first aid kit and some extra batteries. We should be prepared for anything, just in case." Lucas grinned, trying to lighten the mood. "Don't worry, I've packed enough snacks to keep us energized. And if anything weird happens, I'll be here to provide the comic relief." Mia looked up from her notes, her eyes serious. "I've read about some of the disappearances. Most of them happened on nights when the moon was full or nearly full. We should choose a night when the moon is waning to minimize any potential disturbances." Jake nodded in agreement. "Good point. Tonight's moon is waning, so it's perfect. We'll arrive by dusk, set up quickly, and start our night around 9. We'll take turns keeping watch and documenting any strange occurrences." As the night progressed, the friends double-checked their preparations, ensuring that they had everything they needed. They loaded their gear into Jake's old SUV, the headlights cutting through the twilight as they made their way to Dark Lake. The drive was filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension, the familiar route taking on an eerie quality as they neared their destination. Upon arrival, the sight of Dark Lake under the fading light was both beautiful and haunting. The water shimmered with the last rays of the sun, and the surrounding forest seemed to close in around them, casting long shadows that danced in the evening breeze. They parked the SUV and began unloading their equipment, the sounds of the night beginning to emerge as darkness settled in. "Let's set up our base here," Jake suggested, pointing to a clearing near the water's edge. "It's flat, and we have a good view of the entire lake. Plus, it's sheltered enough from the wind." They worked efficiently, each person handling their assigned tasks with a sense of purpose. As they set up their tents and arranged their sleeping bags, the camaraderie among them was palpable. Despite the underlying tension, there was a shared sense of determination to see the challenge through. Once everything was in place, they gathered around a small campfire, the flickering flames providing a comforting warmth against the cool night air. Jake stood up, holding a flashlight to cast shadows on his face. "All right, let's go over the plan one more time. We stay together, keep our phones on silent, and document anything unusual. If anything feels off, we stick to the plan and head back." Emily added, "Remember, we're here to prove that the legend is just a story. Stay rational and keep an eye out for each other." Lucas chuckled, trying to ease the tension. "And if the man from the lake shows up, I'll be sure to give him a good laugh." Mia smiled slightly, though her eyes remained vigilant. "Let's just hope we don't have to test that theory." As the night deepened, the friends settled into their respective spots, the sounds of the forest enveloping them. The initial excitement had given way to a more subdued atmosphere, each of them acutely aware of the stories that surrounded Dark Lake. They took turns keeping watch, their senses heightened by the anticipation of uncovering the truth behind the legend. Hours passed in a delicate balance between calm and unease, the friends remaining steadfast in their commitment to the challenge. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the water, and the night seemed to stretch on indefinitely. Yet, beneath the surface of their bravado, a sense of dread lingered, the shadows of the forest whispering secrets that only the night could reveal. Little did they know, the decision to challenge the legend was about to lead them into a night that would change their lives forever, blurring the lines between myth and reality in ways they could never have anticipated. The drive to Dark Lake was filled with a tense excitement. As Jake navigated the narrow, winding roads flanked by towering trees, the landscape gradually transformed from the familiar outskirts of their town to the wild, untamed beauty surrounding the mysterious body of water. The sky was painted in hues of deep orange and purple as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to dance ominously along the roadside. When they finally arrived, the sight of Dark Lake under the twilight sky was both mesmerizing and unsettling. The water lay still and mirror-like, reflecting the vibrant colors of the sunset and the first stars beginning to twinkle in the evening sky. The dense forest surrounding the lake created a natural barrier, making the area feel secluded and isolated from the rest of the world. Jake parked the SUV on a gravel path leading to their chosen campsite on the northern shore. The ground was soft and damp, the air heavy with the scent of pine and earth. As they stepped out of the vehicle, a cool breeze rustled the leaves, sending a chill down their spines. The friends unloaded their gear, the sound of metal and fabric punctuating the otherwise quiet evening. "All right, let's get everything set up before it gets too dark," Jake instructed, his voice steady despite the undercurrent of unease. Emily began organizing the tents, ensuring that each one was securely anchored to the ground. Lucas unpacked the food and snacks, placing them neatly in a cooler, while Mia spread out her notes and equipment, ready to document any unusual occurrences. As they worked, the sounds of the forest became more pronounced. Crickets chirped rhythmically, and the occasional hoot of an owl echoed through the trees. The friends exchanged nervous glances, each of them acutely aware of the legends that surrounded the lake. Despite their initial bravado, the atmosphere was thick with an unspoken tension. Once the tents were up and the campfire was lit, they gathered around the flickering flames. The warm glow provided a semblance of comfort against the encroaching darkness. Jake took a deep breath, looking around at his friends. "This is it. Let's make sure we stick to the plan and stay together." They settled into their designated spots, the fire crackling softly as shadows danced around them. The conversation turned to lighthearted topics, but every so often, the group would fall silent, listening to the nocturnal symphony that enveloped them. Mia shared some of the historical accounts she had researched, detailing the various disappearances and the eerie similarities among them. As the night deepened, the friends began to feel the first signs that something was amiss. It started subtly, a faint rustling in the bushes, a distant splash that seemed out of place. Emily dismissed it as the natural sounds of the lake, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Lucas tried to keep the mood light, cracking jokes to alleviate the growing unease, but even his laughter sounded strained. About an hour after sundown, as the moon climbed higher into the sky, casting a silvery light over the water, Mia suggested they take a short walk along the shoreline to document the area more thoroughly. Reluctantly, the others agreed, hoping that a brief excursion would quell their mounting anxiety. They grabbed their flashlights and began to walk in a loose formation, the beams cutting through the darkness and illuminating the path ahead. The forest seemed to close in around them as they moved deeper into the trees. The air grew colder, and the sounds of nocturnal creatures became more pronounced. Suddenly, Lucas stopped in his tracks, his flashlight flickering as he pointed toward the water. "Did you guys see that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. A moment later, Emily shone her light in the direction Lucas had indicated, revealing nothing but the still surface of the lake. "Probably just a fish jumping or something," she suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. They continued their walk, but the sense of being watched lingered, making every rustle and snap of a twig feel significant. As they circled back to their campsite, the friends couldn't ignore the growing tension. Back at the fire, they shared their experiences, each recounting the strange noises and fleeting shadows they had encountered. Jake tried to reassure everyone, but his confidence was beginning to waver. Mia, ever the skeptic-turned-believer, suggested they keep a closer watch, setting up additional cameras around the perimeter of their campsite. Night fully settled around them, the darkness now complete and oppressive. The moonlight cast an eerie glow on the water, making it difficult to distinguish between reality and illusion. The friends took their assigned turns keeping watch, their eyes darting nervously through the forest as they tried to remain alert. As the hours ticked by, the initial excitement had faded, replaced by a lingering dread. The first signs they had encountered were no longer dismissed as mere natural phenomena. Something else was at play, something that defied their understanding of the lake and its dark legend. The friends huddled together, the weight of their decision pressing down on them, as the night stretched on with no clear end in sight. Unbeknownst to them, the legend of the man from the lake was stirring, its presence growing stronger as the night deepened. The friends were about to experience firsthand the boundary between myth and reality, and the true terror of Dark Lake was only beginning to unfold. As the hours passed, the atmosphere at the campsite began to shift. The initial excitement and camaraderie gave way to a palpable tension that settled over the group like a heavy blanket. The fire crackled softly, its warmth a small comfort against the encroaching chill of the night. Shadows danced around them, stretching and shrinking with each flicker of the flames, creating an ever-changing tapestry of light and dark. Jake suggested they share personal stories to pass the time, hoping it would lighten the mood and strengthen their bond. One by one, they took turns recounting memorable experiences from their past. Emily spoke of her first solo camping trip, how she had overcome her fear of the dark. Lucas shared tales of his childhood pranks, eliciting nervous laughter from the group. Mia, usually reserved, opened up about her fascination with the supernatural and the countless hours she had spent researching local legends, including the very one they were now challenging. As the stories unfolded, the friends felt a growing sense of unease. Each tale seemed to draw them deeper into the lore of Dark Lake, making the legend of the man from the lake feel less like a distant myth and more like an imminent reality. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it an eerie stillness that seemed to mute the sounds of the night. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the nearby woods, silencing their conversation. The group froze, hearts pounding, eyes darting towards the source of the noise. Emily reached for her flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness to reveal nothing but the swaying trees and rustling leaves. Probably just a branch falling, she suggested, though her voice wavered slightly. Jake, trying to maintain his composure, nodded. Let's not jump to conclusions. It's probably just the wind or an animal, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The night seemed to close in around them, each sound amplified by their heightened senses. As the hours continued to tick by, small, inexplicable events began to occur. The temperature around the campsite dropped suddenly, sending a shiver down their spines. Their flashlights flickered intermittently, casting brief moments of darkness that made them jump. Shadows seemed to move independently of their sources, stretching towards them in unnatural ways. At one point, Mia swore she saw a figure standing at the edge of the lake, barely visible in the dim light, but when the group turned to look, there was nothing there. The friends tried to rationalize the occurrences. Lucas attributed the flickering lights to battery issues, while Emily suggested the dropping temperature was just a natural fluctuation. However, the sense of being watched persisted, an invisible presence that made them constantly glance over their shoulders. The stories they had shared earlier now felt like warnings, each one a reminder of the dangers that might lurk in the darkness. As midnight approached, the tension among the group reached its peak. They decided to take turns keeping watch, ensuring that someone was always alert to any signs of danger. The first watch was assigned to Jake, whose uneasy demeanor betrayed his attempts to appear brave. He sat quietly, eyes scanning the darkness, every rustle and distant sound making him flinch. During his watch, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was moving just beyond the light of the fire. The forest seemed alive, the trees whispering secrets that only the night could understand. He tried to focus on maintaining his composure, but the oppressive silence was unsettling, broken only by the occasional snap of a twig or the distant call of an owl. When it was Emily's turn, she felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. Sitting by the fire, she tried to stay awake, her mind racing with thoughts of the disappearing friends and the legend that had drawn them here. The temperature remained unnaturally cold, and the shadows around her seemed to grow deeper, more menacing. She kept one hand on her flashlight, the beam trembling slightly as she scanned the perimeter of the campsite. Lucas, tasked with the next watch, attempted to distract himself by recounting more humorous stories, but even his jokes couldn't fully dispel the growing fear. He found himself staring into the darkness, his mind playing tricks on him with every shadow that moved. The feeling of unease was becoming overwhelming, and he struggled to maintain his usual lighthearted demeanor. When it was Mia's turn, she took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. Her fascination with the supernatural was now a double-edged sword, providing both knowledge and fear. She focused on the historical accounts she had researched, searching for any clues that might explain the strange occurrences they were experiencing. As she kept watch, she couldn't ignore the persistent sensation that they were not alone, that the legend of the man from the lake was more than just a story. As the night deepened, the friends began to feel the weight of their decision pressing down on them. The initial thrill of challenging the legend had faded, replaced by a lingering dread that something terrible was about to happen. The shadows seemed to grow longer, the sounds more distorted, and the air heavier with an unspoken threat. Without warning, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night, sending shockwaves of fear through the group. They rushed towards the source, their flashlights illuminating a path through the dense forest. The scream had come from the direction of the lake, a place they had always avoided after dark. Panic set in as they realized that one of their own was in danger. As they approached the shoreline, the water lay still and dark, reflecting the pale light of the moon. There was no sign of the person who had screamed, only the eerie silence that followed. The friends stood at the edge of the water, searching desperately for any clue to their missing friend's whereabouts. The legend of the man from the lake loomed over them, its presence now undeniable. The tension reached its breaking point as they stood there, the reality of the legend closing in around them. The night was far from over, and the true terror of Dark Lake was only beginning to unfold. Each step they took further into the mystery brought them closer to uncovering the dark truth that had been hidden for so long, and the bonds of their friendship would be tested in ways they could never have imagined. Panic surged through the group as they stood at the edge of Dark Lake, the scream still echoing in their minds. Jake took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. "We need to find out what happened," he said, his voice barely masking his fear. The others nodded in agreement, their earlier bravado now replaced with genuine terror. Emily suggested they split up to cover more ground, but Jake was adamant they stay together. "No, we stick as a group. If something's out there, we need to watch each other's backs." Reluctantly, the group decided to follow the direction of the scream, moving cautiously along the shoreline. The moonlight cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to reach out towards them, enhancing the eerie atmosphere. Their flashlights pierced the darkness, illuminating the path ahead, but revealing little more. As they walked, the tension was palpable. Every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig made them jump, their senses on high alert. Lucas tried to keep everyone's spirits up with light conversation, but even his jokes couldn't dispel the growing unease. Mia, her eyes darting around nervously, clutched her notebook tightly, searching for any clues in the story she had researched. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a small clearing by the water's edge. The area was unnaturally quiet, the only sound the gentle lapping of the waves against the shore. There were no signs of struggle or disturbance, just an unsettling stillness that made their skin crawl. "Where is he?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "We didn't see anyone else out there." Jake frowned, scanning the area with his flashlight. "I don't know. Maybe he went back to the camp?" Before anyone could respond, a sudden chill swept through the clearing, and the temperature seemed to drop drastically. Their breaths became visible in the cold air, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Mia pointed towards the lake, where the water began to ripple despite the absence of wind. "Look," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. From the depths of the lake, a dark shape emerged, rising slowly towards the surface. The friends watched in horror as the figure took form, a tall, gaunt man with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through their very souls. His presence was oppressive, an aura of malevolence surrounding him. Jake stepped forward, trying to maintain his composure. "Who are you? What do you want?" The man remained silent, his eyes fixed on them with an intensity that made their skin crawl. Suddenly, he raised his hand, and a wave of cold energy rippled outward, knocking them off their feet. The friends struggled to regain their balance, their flashlights flickering wildly in the disturbance. When the light steadied, the man was gone, leaving only the disturbed waters and a lingering sense of dread. The friends scrambled to their feet, eyes wide with fear. "Where's Alex?" Mia cried out, realizing that one of their friends was missing. Alex had stayed close to the group, helping with the equipment set up earlier. Jake's heart sank as he looked around frantically. "Alex, where are you?" A moment of silence followed, broken only by the distant sounds of the night. Suddenly, a faint voice called out from the darkness. "Help me!" They turned towards the sound, their flashlights converging on a small area near a cluster of trees. There, barely visible in the dim light, was Alex, standing motionless with a vacant expression on his face. "Alex!" Emily rushed forward, grabbing his arm. "Come on, we're here to help you." But as she tried to pull him back, Alex's demeanor changed. His eyes glazed over, and he began to move away from them, as if an invisible force was pushing him back into the darkness. "You shouldn't have come here," he whispered, his voice hollow and distant. Jake reached out to steady him, but Alex seemed to resist, his body stiffening unnaturally. "Alex, snap out of it. We're your friends." Mia stepped closer, her fear giving way to determination. There has to be a reason this is happening. Maybe it's the legend, the curse. Before anyone could respond, a cold wind swept through the clearing, and the figure of the man from the lake reappeared, standing between them and Alex. His presence was more menacing than ever, and a sense of hopelessness washed over the group. "Leave now," the man intoned, his voice echoing through the night. "This place is not for the living." Jake took a step forward, defiance in his eyes. "We're not leaving without Alex. Whatever you want, we'll face it together." The man's eyes seemed to glow with an otherworldly light, and the air around them grew thick with tension. Suddenly, Alex collapsed to the ground, unconscious, his body lifeless. Emily knelt beside him, checking for any signs of movement. "He's not responding. We need to get him back to the car." As they turned to leave, the man advanced towards them, his presence overwhelming. The friends felt an invisible force pressing down on them, making it difficult to move. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped, the legend of the man from the lake becoming terrifyingly real. Desperate to escape, Jake shouted, "We need to go now. Leave us alone." But the man did not relent. Instead, he raised his arms, and the ground beneath them began to tremble. The friends stumbled, trying to maintain their footing as the lake seemed to come alive, the water swirling and churning with unnatural energy. In the chaos, Mia managed to grab Alex, pulling him towards the car. "We have to move," she urged, her voice breaking with fear. Lucas, fighting against the invisible force, helped to guide them all towards the SUV. The forest around them seemed to close in, the shadows lengthening and twisting in the darkness. Every step was a struggle, their movements hindered by the malevolent presence that sought to keep them from escaping. As they reached the vehicle, Jake fumbled with the keys, his hands trembling. "Hurry, get in." They piled into the SUV, the door slamming shut just as the man from the lake reached out, his hand grazing the window. A surge of icy coldness hit them, and the engine roared to life as Jake slammed the door shut, breaking free from the oppressive force. Without looking back, they sped away from Dark Lake, the forest receding into the darkness behind them. The friends drove in tense silence, the reality of what they had experienced settling heavily upon them. The laughter and camaraderie that had defined their friendship were now overshadowed by fear and uncertainty. As they reached the safety of the town, they vowed never to return to the lake. The legend of the man from the lake was no longer just a story. It was a haunting reality that had claimed one of their own. The bonds of their friendship were tested, and the memories of that night would linger, a constant reminder of the darkness that lies beneath the surface of Dark Lake. Little did they know, the true consequences of their challenge were only beginning to unfold, and the shadow of the man from the lake would continue to haunt them in ways they could never have imagined. The aftermath of that harrowing night by Dark Lake left the friends grappling with fear and uncertainty. Alex's disappearance weighed heavily on them, each member haunted by the events they had narrowly escaped. Determined to uncover the truth behind the legend and find their missing friend, Jake, Emily, Lucas, and Mia knew they couldn't ignore what had happened. The line between myth and reality had blurred, and they were compelled to seek answers. Back in town, the atmosphere was tense. Rumors of their night at the lake had spread quickly, fueling both skepticism and fear among the residents. The friends decided to keep their investigation discreet, fearing that outsiders might dismiss their claims or, worse, put them in danger. They convened at Jake's house, the site of their initial planning, to strategize their next moves. Mia took the lead, her fascination with the supernatural driving her to delve deeper into the lake's history. She had already gathered a substantial amount of information, but she knew there was more to uncover. "We need to understand the origins of the curse," she said, spreading out old newspaper clippings and faded photographs on the table. "There are gaps in the stories, inconsistencies that might hold the key to what's happening here." Emily, ever the pragmatist, focused on organizing their findings. "Let's start by interviewing the elders. They might have more detailed accounts or personal experiences that we haven't heard yet." Her logical approach provided a necessary balance to Mia's enthusiasm, ensuring their investigation remained grounded. Jake, driven by a mix of guilt and determination, took on the role of coordinating their efforts. "I'll reach out to some of the older residents who were around when the disappearances first started. Maybe someone remembers something we don't." His leadership was crucial in keeping the group focused and motivated, even as fear threatened to undermine their resolve. Lucas, though still shaken, utilized his knack for technology to set up a dedicated space for their research. He created a digital archive, compiling all their notes, recordings, and evidence in one accessible location. This way, we can keep track of everything and look for patterns or connections that might not be obvious at first glance, he explained, his analytical mind proving invaluable. Their first step was to visit the local library, a repository of the town's collective memory. Mia and Emily spent hours sifting through old records, piecing together the timeline of events surrounding Dark Lake. They discovered that the legend of the man from the lake had been passed down for generations, each retelling adding layers of mystery and fear. The earliest accounts dated back to the late 1800s, with numerous reports of disappearances occurring on moonlit nights. One particularly old newspaper article caught Mia's attention. It detailed the story of a man named Thomas Grayson, a fisherman who had vanished without a trace in the early 1900s. According to the article, Grayson had been accused of practicing dark magic, leading to his eventual downfall and the supposed curse that bound him to the lake. The piece hinted at a series of rituals performed to contain his spirit, but the details were vague and incomplete. Determined to fill in the gaps, the friends sought out local historians and longtime residents who might remember family stories or personal accounts related to the legend. They interviewed several elderly townsfolk who recounted tales of eerie sightings and unexplained phenomena. One woman, Mrs. Henderson, recalled a particularly chilling night when the lake seemed to come alive with unnatural energy, much like what the friends had experienced. Another key piece of information emerged from a diary found in the archives, belonging to a woman named Eleanor Whitaker. Her entries described the struggles of living near Dark Lake, her family's fears, and her attempts to protect her children from the curse. The diary mentioned a hidden shrine beneath the water, a place where sacrifices were made to appease the restless spirit of Thomas Grayson. This revelation suggested that the disappearances were not random acts, but part of a sinister ritual aimed at sustaining the curse. Armed with this new knowledge, the friends realized they needed to explore the shrine and uncover its secrets. However, the idea of returning to the lake was daunting, especially with Alex still missing. They debated their options, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. It was Emily who finally voiced the collective fear and determination that had been building within the group. "If we don't do something, Alex might be lost forever," We have to try to break the curse. With a plan forming, they began preparing for a second expedition. This time, they equipped themselves with more advanced gear, including underwater cameras, stronger lighting, and protective talismans suggested by Mrs. Henderson. Mia had also learned about specific chants and symbols from Eleanor Whitaker's diary that might help counteract the curse. The night of their return to Dark Lake was shrouded in an oppressive stillness. The friends approached the shoreline with a mixture of fear and hope, the memories of their previous encounter fueling their determination. They moved cautiously, setting up their equipment and marking the perimeter to ensure they stayed together. Mia led them to the spot indicated in the diary, where the hidden shrine was rumored to be located. As they prepared to dive, the air grew thick with anticipation. The lake, once again, seemed to watch them, its surface reflecting the ominous shadows of the surrounding forest. Taking a deep breath, they descended into the cold, dark waters, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. The underwater world was eerily quiet, the only sounds their own breaths and the distant ripples of the lake. Navigating through the submerged terrain, they followed the clues from Eleanor's diary, their flashlights piercing the darkness. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the shrine, a decrepit stone structure covered in moss and algae. Symbols etched into the stone glowed faintly, resonating with a malevolent energy that made their skin crawl. Mia began to recite the chants, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. Emily and Lucas assisted, their movements synchronized as they worked to disrupt the ritual that had held the curse in place for so long. Jake focused on capturing every moment on camera, documenting their efforts in case they needed to analyze it later. As the chants filled the water, the symbols on the shrine began to shimmer, the oppressive energy around them intensifying. The friends felt a surge of power, as if the very essence of the lake was reacting to their actions. Suddenly, a force erupted from the shrine, sending them spiraling back towards the surface. The water churned violently, and the presence of the man from the lake became undeniably real, his spectral form materializing before them with a wrathful glare. Panic set in as the friends struggled to stay afloat, the malevolent spirit attempting to thwart their efforts. But their determination held firm, and with a final, unified chant, they managed to disrupt the shrine's power. The oppressive force receded, and the lake began to calm, the darkness lifting as dawn approached. Exhausted but triumphant, they surfaced, gasping for air as the first light of daybreak broke over the horizon. The shrine was silent, its dark influence seemingly broken. They had succeeded in their mission, but the relief was tempered by the knowledge that they had faced something truly terrifying. As they made their way back to shore, the friends felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. They had not only uncovered the truth behind the legend, but also taken a significant step towards freeing Dark Lake from its curse. However, the mystery of Alex's disappearance still lingered, a shadow that threatened to undo their victory. Determined to find their friend, they vowed to continue their investigation, knowing that the true battle was far from over. The discoveries they had made opened new avenues of inquiry, and the bonds of their friendship were stronger than ever, forged in the crucible of fear and courage. The legend of the man from the lake had been challenged, but its legacy would continue to shape their lives in ways they had yet to fully comprehend. The morning sun began to pierce through the dense canopy surrounding Dark Lake, casting a warm, golden light over the once ominous waters. The friends stood on the shoreline, exhausted yet relieved, watching as the first rays of dawn dispelled the lingering shadows of the night. The oppressive darkness that had enveloped the lake seemed to lift, replaced by a serene stillness that promised a new beginning. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air fill his lungs. "We did it," he whispered, the weight of their ordeal beginning to lift from his shoulders. The successful disruption of the shrine's power had not only broken the curse, but also weakened the malevolent presence that had haunted the lake for generations. The friends exchanged weary but triumphant smiles, their bond strengthened by the trials they had endured together. Despite their victory, a sense of unease remained. The mystery of Alex's disappearance still lingered, casting a shadow over their achievement. They had managed to confront the legend and disrupt its hold, but the fate of their friend was still unknown. Determined to leave no stone unturned, they decided to conduct a final search around the lake, hoping to find any trace of Alex or clues that might explain his sudden vanishing. As they walked along the now calm shoreline, the friends felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. The water, once a source of fear, now reflected the clear blue sky, its surface unmarred by the disturbances of the previous night. They scoured the area meticulously, searching for any signs that might lead them to Alex. Hours passed without any significant findings, but their persistence paid off when Mia stumbled upon a partially submerged path leading into a dense thicket of trees. "Look at this," Mia called out, pointing to the hidden trail. The path was barely visible, covered in moss and overgrown with vegetation, suggesting it had been long forgotten. The friends followed the trail, their footsteps silent on the soft earth. The path led them to a secluded cove where the water met the land in a tranquil embrace. There, nestled among the rocks, they found something unexpected, a small, makeshift shrine, similar to the one they had encountered underwater. Jake approached the shrine cautiously, noticing that it was adorned with personal items, a photo of the group, a handwritten note, and several candles that had long since burned down. Among the items was a piece of Alex's clothing, partially wet and lying on the ground. Emily picked up the note, her hands trembling as she read its contents aloud. "We never should have come here. Please forgive us. The lake took more than just my friend. Be careful." Tears welled up in their eyes as the reality of their situation sank in. It became clear that Alex had been sacrificed to maintain the curse, a grim reminder of the lake's dark power. The friends stood in silence, the weight of their loss pressing down on them. They had succeeded in breaking the curse, but the cost was immeasurable. Determined to honor Alex's memory and prevent further tragedies, the group decided to take down the shrine and perform a final ritual to cleanse the lake completely. They gathered the remaining items, carefully dismantling the shrine and scattering the ashes into the water. As they did so, Mia led them in a series of chants she had learned from Eleanor Whitaker's diary, her voice steady despite the lingering sorrow. The air around them seemed to shimmer with a renewed sense of peace as the ritual concluded. The friends felt a profound connection to each other and to the lake, a bond forged through shared fear and unwavering courage. They knew that their lives had been irrevocably changed by the events of that night, but they also felt a sense of closure, knowing they had faced the darkness and emerged stronger for it. As they packed up their belongings and prepared to leave Dark Lake for the last time, the friends took one final look at the tranquil waters. The legend of the man from the lake had been silenced, its hold over the town broken by their determination and sacrifice. They walked away with heavy hearts, but also with a renewed sense of purpose, committed to supporting each other as they moved forward. Back in town, the friends shared their story with the community, providing evidence and testimonies that finally put the long-standing fears to rest. The once feared lake became a symbol of their resilience and the power of friendship in the face of unimaginable terror. The disappearance of Alex remained a poignant reminder of the night they had lost a friend, but it also served as a testament to their bravery and the lengths they had gone to protect their town. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to normal, but the friends never forgot the experiences they had endured. They continued to support each other, their bond unbreakable and their memories intertwined with the haunting beauty of Dark Lake. The legend had been confronted and overcome, but its legacy lived on in their hearts, a constant reminder of the darkness that once lurked beneath the surface and the light they had brought to dispel it. As time passed, the friends found solace in knowing they had made a difference, not just for themselves but for their entire community. They had faced their deepest fears and emerged victorious, their story becoming a new legend of courage and unity. The tale of Dark Lake and the man from the lake would be remembered, not as a story of fear, but as a beacon of hope and the enduring strength of friendship.